Hello and welcome to the PAEA podcast. Today is the final episode of our involvement with the podcast. When we first kicked this off, it was a passion project attempting to level the playing field for pre-PA students from all backgrounds and particularly those from economically disadvantaged communities. We felt that our profession had become a little complacent with information given the enormous expansion of the applicant pool over the past 20 years. And we noticed that our colleagues were starting to charge for their expertise when the only expertise they had to offer was their own successful navigation into a PA program. Over the course of the past 102 episodes, we've had the privilege of interviewing world leaders in the profession, as well as our up-and-coming stars, and we've covered a wide variety of topics on the profession. Now, our time has come to a close. Today, we share our reflections of the past 5 seasons and introduce you to the next host of the podcast, PAEA's Chief Diversity Officer, Emma Sellers. Well, Steph, episode 102.
Here we are.
Here. Yeah.
Yep. We set a goal to make it to 100, and we actually surpassed it by a little bit.
We did. And it was serendipity because we had intended to be done by the end of the summer recording, which we are. This is actually August as we record. This will be on in December. So I hope everybody had a great fall. But we ended up going over just a little bit, and it was good because it gave us a chance to cover your Phoenix campus program, the U of A's PA program, and to do this last episode where we get a chance to reflect back on our 5 seasons, but also talk about the future of the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've always done a little bit of a season recap, but this is a little more fun, a little bittersweet. I think I'm equally sad to be passing the torch over on this, but also feeling very reflective about all of the great ground we have covered and the amazing individuals that we've been able to highlight and the programs that we've been able to show to a broader audience. And this has just it's been such a privilege to be involved in this. So I'm appreciative to all of those that made that possible.
I'll just do my usual stats thing. I'm looking backwards to date. So obviously we'll have downloads in the future, but to date, our podcast has been downloaded in 67 countries worldwide, which is pretty cool.
Amazing.
You want to guess at the top 5?
Gosh, I'm always really terrible about this. Obviously, the U.S. is probably going to be up there, and I would guess maybe the U.K. and Canada are probably up there.
Yep.
Maybe the Netherlands?
No.
Okay. All right.
I think we know.
Lay the rest of them on me.
All right. Of those, you said U.S. would be top, which you're correct. Where would you rank the U.K.?
I don't know, maybe 3rd or 4th?
It's 5th.
5th? Okay. All right.
How about our Canadian neighbors to the north?
They're probably 2nd. My guess is they're 2nd. Yep.
3rd was a surprise for me, actually. Japan.
Interesting.
And then Ireland. I think when we highlighted the Irish program in Dublin with Lisa Alexander, I think we picked up some listeners. So cheers to our Irish friends.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's pretty cool. So of those, of the U.S., we've had 23,203 downloads. And then it gets substantially lower after that. We're in the hundreds.
Sure.
That's good. Also, I'll just say, where do you think we are downloaded the most in terms of apps or websites?
I guess it would be Apple.
Yeah. 46% of our listeners use Apple.
Given the wide distribution of use of Apple products, my guess would have been Apple.
Yeah. And Spotify is 22%. Google Chrome, almost 10%, just listen to it on their web browser. Safari, 4.43%. And Overcast, I've never heard of Overcast, but 1.51% of the 37,000 downloads to date came from Overcast.
All right. How about states?
We've covered a lot. So not all. So here's just a snapshot, right? We've covered New York, California, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, of course, the birthplace of the profession. We had to be there. Maine, Boston, or I should say Massachusetts, although I think all 3 programs are in Boston. We've got North Dakota. We've got Minnesota. We got Iowa.
You rode there a little bit. You had to get that Minnesota in there.
Yeah, hey there, at a Midwesterner, we can do that. Yeah, and then, of course, Colorado, Arizona, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, Montana. So not surprisingly, Wyoming wasn't covered because we don't have a PA school in Wyoming yet.
No, but there's one developing there. University of Wyoming's got one in development.
Fantastic.
One of our last holdouts of states that doesn't have a program is working to remedy that. So that's great.
that will be a good one to cover when our
Future.
partner takes over our podcast in the future. We also, New Mexico, they've got a couple programs in New Mexico that we haven't covered yet.
Yep.
Texas, we've only hit 2 in Texas. Texas is a pretty big state.
Yeah.
I think they have at least 10 programs in Texas, so that could be one.
South Dakota and Kansas, we haven't hit yet.
No. And to our New York colleagues, look, we know you're huge. You've got so many and Pennsylvania for that matter. We barely scratched the surface of those 2 states.
Yeah.
So
No,
our
lots of
apologies.
opportunity for the ongoing future of this podcast for sure.
Yeah. Alabama, Mississippi as well. So yeah, there's lots to do in the future. So as you think back, Steph, we've done this on other reflections. What are the themes that have been consistent for you across all 5 seasons?
Yeah, I think that there are a few that really stand out to me. First and foremost is just the ubiquitous passion that I see for every single person that we have interviewed for this profession and for a level of excellence in the PA profession and for students and the student experience. There's just this across the board caring and passion for what we do and what we want our profession to be, that it's unwavering. And I don't think that's an accident. I don't think it's just because we have selected people who are passionate. I do believe that is it's just a deeply ingrained quality in people who are a part of this profession. Another theme that I think that we've really seen is a commitment to diversifying our profession. I think that there has been a demonstrated effort across the board for programs recognizing that our workforce doesn't really currently reflect our population and the population of people that PAs serve. And I think that there's a true, genuine commitment to trying to diversify our profession among PA educators. And then another one that I think came up a lot, and I saw it both in listening to the qualities that educators were looking for in applicants to their program, but also just in the acts that they themselves had engaged in, and that is the unwavering commitment to service as well. We have seen so many people that they say service is an important thing for us. We want students that have demonstrated that they have engaged in some service activities. But then we've listened to individuals who have they've done mission trips and they've developed street medicine programs, and just the service to humanity seems to be a real theme that I've seen in just about almost everyone we've talked to.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those folks that we spoke with who are now in leadership roles in the profession, as you hear their path to becoming a PA and you hear about their PA programs, it's clear that they started with service, they built it with service, and they continue to serve. And I think it's a real proud moment for everybody in the PA profession that one of the hallmark core values of our profession, and I think this is consistent with many health professions too. I'm not saying we're special, but it's consistent. These folks serve their guts out, and they're not doing it for money. They're doing it to help others take a step up. And I think that's really impressive.
I agree.
It's interesting. There's been quite a few other podcasts coming out lately. It seems to be the hot trend. When we started 5 seasons ago, our colleagues, Adrian Banning and Christopher Madej and some others were already doing this, but not a lot of people are doing it. Now you see podcasts with the NCPA, you see it with PAEA has 2 other podcasts that they're supporting. So it's cool for 2 slightly older geezers in the profession to middle-agers to have hit that when we did.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be helpful just to talk about, again, one last time, what kind of motivated us to do this, because it's been a lot of work for both of us. And I think it's been such a passion project for the 2 of us. And I was wondering if you could retell that story of how we ended up going from like a Twitter conversation to trying to solve this problem.
Yeah, I mean, I do think I don't even really remember, maybe you remember the specific conversation, but I know it was bantering back and forth on social media to begin with. And obviously, you and I go way back in our service to PAEA, so we've known each other for many years. But I think had been an initial conversation around maybe something that I had posted on social media about equity in access to information about our profession for anyone who's interested. And I think for me, it was really rooted in seeing a lot of services that were being provided to pre-PA students at a fairly high monetary cost to have things like mock interviews or their narrative reviewed or whatever those things are that were costing a lot of money. And it was frustrating to me because I was thinking good information about the PA profession and about PA programs shouldn't be a proprietary thing. It frustrated me because I felt like it further widened the divide between the haves and the have-nots. I felt like students who may not have the monetary means to pay for things like information about the profession, or good quality information about the profession, or someone to do a mock interview with them and that kind of thing. Those shouldn't be things that only privileged people have access to. And while I can't make all of those things available to everybody, I think the conversation that you and I had led to a discussion that we could make really good information about the profession and about programs available to everyone at no cost.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I'm not anti-capitalist or anti-entrepreneurial. I think that our greatest innovations in the United States have come from that kind of attitude. So I definitely appreciate people trying to utilize their skills to help people in ways that there may have been gaps. What bothered me was that the people that we saw doing this had zero experience in PA education, zero experience interviewing PAs. Their only expertise was they were one of the lucky people to get into a program.
Yeah.
And then they're turning around and charging other people to gain from their incredible experience. And I just felt like that bothered me. But also, I think that the profession have become a little fat and happy in that our applicant pools were huge. We had double-digit applicant growth in the CASPA numbers for over a decade.
Yep.
I don't think people felt an absolute need to be transparent and available. If you can't read our website, then we don't want you in our program. But I think there's a lot of people around the country that didn't know about some of these really wonderful programs that are out there that were a better fit for them than maybe the one that was in their backyard.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's been a great opportunity, I think, to highlight. I think people tend to think about the programs, they know about the programs that are in their specific geographic region, and maybe don't always think about maybe expanding their geographic search a little bit, or considering moving away and doing something a little bit different. Perhaps listening to a program director or a leader in that program talking about that specific program might have sparked an interest that might not otherwise have been there. So I really hope we've opened up the PA program world to people in a little bit different way, or just personalize the programs. I think that's the other thing. It's one thing to look at a program profile. It's one thing to look at their website, and you can certainly glean a lot of information when you look at a profile or look at the website online. But when you're actually hearing from the individuals who are at the helm of the program, or who are integrally involved in teaching the students in that program, it just gives it a little bit different flair, and it gives it a true personality. And I think that was a real benefit of what we've started here.
Yeah, and I have to concur with you. I think that I'm a very visual guy, and I think about when you and I were on the board with PAEA, and we would have those board meetings, the annual forum meetings that we had, and you'd look out at everybody in the audience, and you see all these friends that you know that are just wonderfully intelligent, innovative educators who are passionate about serving people. And we had a wonderful opportunity to use this platform to highlight these folks and really personalize their stories. And I learned a lot about people that we've known for a long time that I didn't know exactly how they ended up in the profession, because that's not a conversation we typically have at these meetings.
Yeah, give us a little bit of a window into the genesis of where people's journeys began. So it's been really interesting too.
So I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to anyways. Why are we stopping from your perspective?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I think both you and I, in our own individual professional lives, are both endeavoring into new and elevated things. And while this has absolutely been a project of passion for us, it has not been without some significant investment of time and effort on our part. And while I think I speak for myself, I have loved it. It's also a little bit of a lift, and I have a lot of other equally important things in my life that deserve some attention as well. And so I think sometimes you get to a point in your life where you have to prioritize some things. And I think it was time for us to say, hey, I feel like we've done a really great job of highlighting programs and meeting the mission of this podcast so far. But maybe somebody else new has something new to offer, and maybe some new angles and a new direction to take this that can be as good and better in new ways.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you hit it on the head for me. I think it's been a labor of love, but it has been laborious at times. I certainly want to thank our colleagues at PAEA and the association briefing colleagues, Kobe Horton and Frank Humata, who have been our engineers for the last year on this.
It's tremendous support for us.
I know. I haven't had to work for 4 hours on a Saturday putting this all together after we've recorded. So I'm really grateful for them taking that huge weight off of our shoulders. But I agree. I think it's time for fresh eyes and fresh ideas. And There's so many other programs to be in, and I just don't have the time to do that anymore in my current role. So it's a perfect time to step away. And some of the greatest television shows in history, 100 episodes is the big number.
Yeah, it's a milestone, and I'm happy that we achieved it.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Last thing I want to put you on the spot for, and then we'll start to unveil the future of our podcast and introduce our new colleague who's going to take this over and move it in a great direction. What are your top 3 favorite podcasts?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me this. I think I really have a hard time picking 3 specific, and it feels a little unfair to pick 3 specific ones because they've all been just so amazing and unique in different ways. But I guess if I think about favorite, maybe even favorite themes, I think one favorite theme I loved in our second season when we highlighted some programs and the profession in other countries. I really think has been really interesting to see how this profession, sort of sister professions, have developed in different health systems and different areas that have different health care needs of their populations. And so it's really interesting to see how this profession has integrated into other health systems and into other geographic areas. So I think the highlighting some of our global colleagues, it was a really interesting period for me. Another cluster of episodes that I've really enjoyed is some of the groups that have developed or are developing to represent some of the historically marginalized populations. For example, the PAs for Latino Health or the Muslim Student Association for PAs and Students. I loved Noor and Marwa and Mubashir from the Muslim Student Association, how they just looked around and they said, there's no group that represents us. We're going to make one. And I think that is that ingenuity and that attitude for just making something out where nothing exists and seeing how they are able to create a group that will now promote and represent and bring together a community of individuals is just, it's amazing to see that happen. And then I don't know, I think again, it's for me, it's always just, it's personal to be able to connect with some of the people who are historic figures in our profession. And I look at people like Jim Cawley and Bill Kohlheb and Ruth Ballweg, and the list goes on. We were able to talk to a lot of folks who have been just so influential and have been pioneers in our profession over the years. And so I think I've appreciated each one of those episodes just to be able to, and you could talk for those folks for hours and still have things to learn from them, but to just scratch the surface a little bit of them and their experiences and their journey and their contributions to the profession. So I know I threw a few names out. I didn't really pick and choose specific episodes, but I think those are 3 kind of themes that I've probably enjoyed the most.
All right. So since you copped out on your top 3, just the themes, I'm going to take the liberty to do the same thing. So I agree. I agree with you. I agree with all of the things you said, but my 3 would be, what an incredible opportunity to interview, for me, my 3 presidents as the 3rd episode, because I think about it from the theme of the future of the profession. And then I think about all of our colleagues who we got a chance to interview that are part of the leadership profession now. And then you said all of the people that went before us as pioneers, like Jim Cawley, Ruth Ballweg, Paul Lombardo, Dawn Morton Reyes, Sharon Luke in the ARCPA, Justine Strand de Oliveira, on and on. Dana Sarah Stanhope, Cindy Lord.
On whose shoulders we stand, right?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, gosh, I can't forget, of course, Matt Dane Baker.
Yeah.
It was
so many.
It's history.
So many.
It's history.
And if we've forgotten to mention you and you deserve to be on that list, we apologize.
Of course, our good friends from the University of Iowa that remind me of the 2 Muppets up in New York.
Thorpe and Statler.
Yeah, Dave Asprey and Tony Brenneman. Then leaders in other countries, like you said, the opportunity to interview folks in the Netherlands and Germany, Ireland, the UK, et cetera. I think that's just what an incredible blessing that we've been able to use this platform to capture some of those. And think about it, Ruth Ballweg's story to me, I had never heard that full story of her, on her dad being a pilot in the military and her hanging around airfields. It all makes sense now when you think about, as a woman early on in this profession in the early 70s, like where she just basically, she didn't ask permission. She just entered a room and commanded attention in a very appropriate way. And it led to not only great things at MedX and in the country, but she's done such great work worldwide too.
I don't know that there's ever been a room that Ruth Ballweg didn't walk into and command, but that was who she was. She was unabashedly herself, and the profession benefited from that.
And I'm so grateful we captured her before she passed away, which was a big loss for our profession. Anyways, just a couple things I want to make sure we thank. I want to thank all of our listeners, all 37,000 of you that downloaded episodes, or all 5 of you that downloaded the episodes 37,000 times, whatever it was. We're really grateful that you spread the word, that you enjoyed this, that you stuck with us, and hopefully you continue to pay it forward to other pre-PAs and continue this mission moving forward. I know Steph and I both want to thank PAEA and Colby and Frank for helping us out in this last 2 seasons, because it was getting to be a little too much work for us to finish up, and it gave us a new life and energy to get to 100 episodes, and I'll be very grateful to them, of course. And Steph, I'm thankful to you. I'm so grateful that you said yes, and you're such a loyal and steadfast partner. Even through tough times, you always found time for us to get this on tape, and it's been a real joy working with you again. We get to do it with PAEA's board and with the President's Commission, but thank you very much for being part of this.
And likewise, back to you. I felt like a lot of times you gave me a lot more credit than I probably deserved. You were certainly the bulk of the brains behind this thing. Lest anyone think that I deserve the credit that I've probably been given. I don't. Kevin truly was the kind of the heart and soul behind this, and I was just fortunate enough to be asked along for the ride. I'd also like to thank my colleagues here at my home program at Creighton University. This is not an insignificant investment in time. And so time that I was spending here, I was not spending on other things that I probably needed to be doing and could have been doing here on the home front. And my team here of faculty and staff are incredibly capable and supportive. And I think they've been very happy to support me along the way and have given me kind of the time and space to make this a part of my weekly work. So I am appreciative of my team here at Creighton University.
And ditto to USC and the University of Arizona and the leadership for letting us do this on their dime to help move the profession forward. I think I'm incredibly grateful. And now as an interim dean, as I think about ways to support our faculty, this is a really emerging area for scholarship. It's new information. It's being disseminated worldwide for us. And I'm going to continue to fight for faculty AP&T committees to think about this as a valuable contribution to the scholarly discussions around the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Steph, I think it's time to do our warm handoff as we do in medicine and introduce our new colleague who's going to take over the reins of the podcast moving forward for PAEA. And so we'd like to introduce Emma Sellers, who is the Chief Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Officer for the Physician Assistant Education Association. And she is really excited to take the lead on this for the organization. And Emma, why don't you start by just telling our audience a little bit about your background and how you got involved with PAs in the first place?
Thanks so much, Steph and Kevin, for the warm handoff. I'm absolutely looking forward to doing the podcast and taking it in a little bit different direction, but just building on what you all have already started. So I've been doing diversity education in one way or another for about 15 years. I started in brick and mortar at private institutions, and I've worked at local government and started diversity programs in local government and then shifted to PAEA a little over 2 years ago. So while newer to the PA education world, just being a couple years, not new to the diversity space. And of course, understanding all the good, the bad, and the challenges that we're facing and how it's impacting PA education specifically. So my entry into PA education, so I mentioned I'd worked at brick and mortar institutions. And one of those institutions, I was on the university's leadership team, and we were starting a PA program. And so I was very involved in the hiring and recruitment of our faculty, our directors, worked very heavily in recruiting our first cohorts and all the cohorts thereafter. So just really fell in love with the work of the physician assistant or physician associate. Also very much appreciated the commitment to diversity in the PA profession and the way PAs go out into spaces, rural areas, urban areas, those areas that other people may not be so drawn to and get the work done. And that just really spoke to me as an individual, as a professional, and really became an extension of the work that I do. So when the opportunity at PAEA came in this diversity space, just grateful for the opportunity and of course, excited to say yes and love doing the work that we get to do for the association and the profession.
So Emma, how do you see the podcast dovetailing into the work that you're doing for PAEA? Where do you feel the Venn diagrams cross over?
Oh, absolutely. So one thing that we are really putting a focus on at PAEA is how do we look at the recruitment outreach space through the EDI lens? How do we truly put a focus and emphasis on diversifying the profession? And what does that look like? How do we reach different populations of people and help them understand that you can have many paths, many backgrounds, and you can still end up in a PA program, in a classroom, and ultimately a PA clinician or professional? And so with this podcast, one thing that we are looking forward to is really, again, continuing to focus on the diversity of ways, the diverse ways that individuals become PAs, and also putting a focus with pre-PA students and really helping them understand the process to get here. That just because your background is in XYZ, whatever it might be, it doesn't count you out. There are some things that you can do to still lead to this pathway. And it's obviously, we see application numbers increasing each year. We know it's an extremely lucrative profession, very positive impact. And so we are looking forward to, again, taking what's already been established, discussing the different ways to become a PA, continuing on that, and also at the same time focusing it primarily to pre-PA students, using it more of a recruitment tool in the pre-PA space to just help folks understand it's more than one way, and we'll help have those conversations to get you here.
Yeah, and I think that's something that if you've been a listener for a while, you really can appreciate that there are just so many paths. And that's why this was originally named the PA Path Podcast, because we really wanted to highlight all of the different paths that people take to come to this profession. And that was the genesis of this podcast, was really to reach out to people who may not have easy access to information about not only just generally the PA profession, but certainly to individual PA programs. So for you personally, what excites you about delving into the podcast world?
There's so many things. Anytime that we can help folks who, as you said, Stephanie, who in many cases may not know about the profession, may not know about the past, anytime that we can help educate folks on what it is that PAs do, who PAs are, the impact that PAs have, is already impactful and exciting enough. When we can do that same work with a focus through equity, diversity, and inclusion, that is even more exciting or even more interesting for me. I also think, in addition to some things you already mentioned, one thing that is also going to be very helpful, we hope, as we shift and kind of take over the reins, is how do we help students understand what the advisor role is? What does the interview process look like? Some of those just nitty gritty things that, again, some students may not have experienced before. And again, the ability to do all of this with that focus on EDI, and to be a part of a profession, an association, or to work with an association for a profession that in the times that we are in is still bold enough to take that EDI stance and EDI focus is pretty incredible and it's pretty remarkable. So I'm looking forward to leading this through that lens again, and the overall outcome that we know it'll have on the profession and the patients.
And I just say one of the best things about our profession as educators is when you get to watch students come to the profession from communities that aren't always given access to this. And you see, first of all, if you can't respect cultures where families are so integrated and rely upon each other to grow into new areas that perhaps wasn't always available to the community. And then you see the multi-generational impacts from those stories of students who, get through undergrad, then get on to grad school, and then start practicing healthcare and, realize the economic opportunities that come with being a healthcare provider, coupled with the great prestige and honor of doing that for patients who are in need. It's so heartwarming for us to see those stories kind of grow. And then you see them have kids, and then you see their kids go into the profession. So I know Steph and I both are excited for you and the direction you're taking this, and we'll be your biggest cheerleaders behind the scenes as you take over the reins of this podcast and move it forward in 2025.
Well, I appreciate that. And we absolutely know and see the shoes that we have to fill. So thank you both so much for the work that's been done. And, don't go too far. We might call you back to join in for a conversation. And again, just look forward to the continued work and just reaching out to as many folks who otherwise may not get to tap into the profession.
And just for clarification, it sounds like your first episodes will be published in early January.
Yes, absolutely. That is our plan.
Well, here's to wishing you the very best in your success, and thank you for taking the time to share your story with us.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
We want to thank Emma for taking the time to share her vision for the podcast starting in 2025. And we want to extend a special thank you to our colleagues who have shared their time and insights on the profession for these past 5 seasons. Finally, a special thanks to PAEA and our sound engineering colleagues, Frank and Colby, for their support over the past 2 years. Cheers!
Cheers.